Within the cloudy nature of every human being, there is the following statement and attitude. I am very weak and defenseless and at the mercy of everything I can see with my eyes, at the mercy of unfolding events in my day. I am weak. I have no strength. But they are very strong, powerful, dominating. Their word is the first and last word. Now, this human being saying that is unable to define the they. Because he has not investigated, he doesn't know that the they is him. That's a little side thought because we have to go on with the main track. I am a weak human being, but there are other human beings and circumstances that are very, very strong and domineering. Now, I'm afraid of those people. They have the power, the authority to yell at me, to imprison me, to make me do things that I don't want to do. They crack the whip and I jump. This is the way it is in this society that I live in. Therefore, in order to not be hurt by them, in order to get by, in order to survive yet, I'm going to have to behave toward them in a way that will not offend them. I'm going to have to develop attitudes, words, beliefs, behaviors. I'm going to have to be very much on my guard to please them, to not offend them. And more than that, I am going to have to make them think that I like them, even love them, that I'm very willing, in fact eager, for them to be the leader, and I'm the humble, submissive, and very happy, content follower. This is the attitude of everyone. This is the scheme. This is the game plan. This is the plan by which every human being, unknown to himself because he doesn't know himself, this is the way he figures it should be done. Knowing nothing about the real laws of life, he has substituted his own ways, fallen into them, never investigated whether there is something higher than what he has proposed to do, and so he sticks in it. Now you better get yourself into this talk right now. Who do you fawn before? Who do you want to please so that they'll be pleased with you? Get yourself into the picture. Because we're coming to another very important point. Having adopted this belief in that this is the way in which he can stay safe, secure, and get along and not get whipped every day. Having adopted that, he has also adopted something else that every day and every night grows more dimmer to his consciousness, which is that he is a beast, which is that his hostility and his rage is there. which contradicts his open sworn statement to himself and to others that he loves being a faithful follower, a servant of whatever on high he has set up and which he believes in. Not knowing anything about the operations of his mind, he has within himself a beast, a monster of hostility. You'll recognize these phrases because you feel the corresponding emotions. He feels a rage and a hatred, but it's buried. Why? Because he has to hide them in order to protect the primary interest, which is to please the leader in order not to get hurt. Remember the law, spiritual law, where you have a fanciful belief in love, in devotion, in thinking that someone else is wonderful, where if you praise another human being, if you can't say too many good things about him, you're a hysterical maniac. And of course, the person worshiping you, he's not going to straighten you out. This is the way he wants it. He's being fed. Do you think he's going to deny the source of his own false nourishment? Where there is the false devotion, there is the opposite, down the beast, hiding in the jungle, waiting patiently, hopefully, tearing them apart. Oh, I'm telling you what kills people, what wrecks their mind, their health, what drives them crazy, what wants them to jump off the bridge, because they've never resolved the problem. We'll talk about that more later. But this man or woman, am I getting close? Yes, you know I am. He's saying to himself, one day, and he dreams about it and he pictures it and he delights in it. When he turns off TV, his own TV starts to go in. All unconscious, all unknown to himself. One day, I'm going to be the leader and you are going to be the follower. And just wait and see what happens to you. How about taking a look right now at the revenge factor in yourself? Within the clouds of your own attitudes is what I have described, and what will always include, besides the opposites of so-called all love and punishment, it will also include waiting for the day when you can strike back and you will be the one in charge. That's the sentence that human beings have passed on to themselves because they do not come to New Life Foundation and let this hellish process be explained to them. Unless you hear the solution, how can you have it? You'll say you have the solution of playing it safe and feeling good and not knowing that you're unnatural, you're artificial, and you're a brooding, brutal beast just waiting for your day. But it doesn't make any difference in this world whether your day comes or not, because as long as you are the follower or the leader, you are lifeless. You have nothing to live for but hatred and revenge, and waiting for the day when you can get your thrills by punishing another instead of being punished by someone else. It makes no difference where your thrills come from as long as you're lost. You really don't care where you are as long as you've got them. You would like to go to the opposite and experience that for a while. Person being persecuted wants to be the persecutor, and there's also in the persecutor the desire to be the persecuted one. Oh, then I can, if I'm persecuted, I won't have any responsibilities. I can just work to make myself a public martyr, get everyone to feel sorry for me. That's it. That's good. I'll do everything I can to claim that I'm being persecuted and get instances, historical instances, and that's as good as anything else. All this is the process of devilishness. Now, all this comes from a distorted, raging mind. There's nothing else but this cloudy mind operating. Nothing. And indeed, the individual doesn't want anything else. He's got his world, thinking when he's the persecuted one, that when he's the persecutor, then something will be different. He can't quite define it. He's not sure of how it'll be different, but at least he feels it would be variety. Now I'm going to switch from the hell we've described to heaven, which is not a part of the mental operation and apparatus that we've been discussing. I'm talking about you as a spiritual aspirant saying something different. I gave you the statement that the neurotics conceal. I am very weak and oppressed, but they are very strong, and so you get your plan for existing, for continuing to survive. A spiritual mind says, I am strong and they are weak. Now, slow down a little bit. Don't think with your minds, don't proceed with your minds on that statement I just gave you, or you'll go vagrant, go wrong, wander off the highway. I said it is possible, not for your intellect, not for your present nature, but it is possible for something else to say within you, I am strong and they are weak. And that's true. Now, do you see the pole vault that we've made way from earth to heaven? There is such a thing as a spiritual self. That spiritual self, which is talking and making that statement, can also be called a conscious I, a knowing self. That means when you have made the vault upstairs, the statement you make, I am an absolute authority and they have no authority at all, is accurate because it isn't you talking anymore. You used to talk and I explained what you said before. But there's a new I. There is a conscious, awake human being who is knowingly repeating what he has heard from God. The authority that you, as the vaulting student, the authority with which you say, I am all powerful, comes as you know that only the power and authority of God exists. You know you don't. How long did it take? 30 years? 50 years? You're still working on it? It can come. That right day can come, in which reality is speaking through you. Oh no, you're not living your own life anymore. You're not talking your own life anymore. Matter of fact, you have nothing whatever to do with your own life anymore. And don't try to imagine what that means. Just follow it till you see for yourself. So, you have a new nature, a new way of speaking, in which there is total confidence. You know you're never going to lose it, because you can't lose God once you found him. God won't desert you. And you understand how you were years ago in the past, when you did say, I am weak and they're strong, therefore here's how I'm going to stay safe. You understand the utter neurosis of it, the wrongness, the madness, and how it was unnecessary. There is the light, which is very quiet. And that light from God, which is now shining within you, now finally understands who they were. You understand who the enemy was. Who was the enemy? You were the enemy. Your ignorance was the enemy. It wasn't anything out there. How many people or organizations or events are you afraid of out there? They have no power to be enemies, except that as you want to be you who has an enemy in order to exist as being either prosecuted or honored or loved or whatever. The enemy can no longer exist because there is only one thing now operating in your whole life. Before there were two things, weren't they? Me, defenseless me, and the power structures out there. The people with all the money, the people who can pass laws that might go against me. There were two things. You made them. You wanted there to be two things in your ignorance because you didn't know that there was such a thing as a spiritual life which is above the mental life. Now the enemy has disappeared because you have seen that it's only necessary for the maintenance of a mad life. You didn't want to be crazy anymore. You saw how it tore you apart. How you always had to be arguing, explaining, faking it, and always worried that others would see through your fakery. You see, listen to this. Having made contact with God by disappearing from your ego nature, you see so many things as unnecessary, and they're no longer in your life, but you don't know it now. See, I'm giving you advanced knowledge, like we're turning all of a sudden from page 1 to page 500 of a book and showing you some advanced information. Would you like to make a list right now in your mind? Please do so. Of what you think is necessary for you. Shall I settle it for you and make it easy? Only truth is necessary for you. I tell you, nothing else. Not even that physical body that you worry about so much, that gives you so much trouble. Not that. Not the game plans, the little schemes. Oh, how you hope that one day fate will be kind enough to say yes to them. But they says no half the time. And when it says yes, you get nothing that lasts. Not necessary. Any desire that your mind projects and says, I've got to have that, you don't have to have that. Now, isn't that going to knock the props out from under your artificial foundations of your life? Why don't you let every man-made, woman-made, self-made theory, scheme collapse? And now, and let God enter your life, and let God be your intelligence. You're not going to make it otherwise. Nobody makes it without God, without the spiritual life. You know the old-fashioned song entitled, Somewhere a Voice is Calling? A voice is calling, you know who hears it? Those who want to. Those who don't want to hear it, it could be right in this room, it could be outside this room. God telling you things. See, do you know what the voice of God is? In one way, what you've heard tonight. Why? Because it's accurate. Because it's revealing. Because it's telling you about yourself. Telling you where you're wrong. God is very eager to correct any human being who wants to be corrected. Somewhere the voice is calling. It's calling right here and now. Have you been listening to it? Story time. There was a man who owned a cabin in the wilderness. Isolated, vast forests. And one day he invited a number of friends to come and spend a day or two with him in his nice, pretty cabin, surrounded by large green trees. Nice place to be, away from the noisy town. So the friends came out, and one day they were sitting out on the porch, just relaxed and just enjoying nature. And one of the men, visitors, guests, suddenly became alarmed. And he shouted out and pointed out to billows of smoke that was beginning to arise in the distance, several miles away. And he asked his host, is that a forest fire? What's going on there? And the other guests, people are very easy to infect with emotion, aren't they? And the other guests, all of a sudden, they'd read about forest fires and people being trapped in it, and they personalized, of course, which was right on a certain physical level. And they were suddenly worried because they too saw the clouds of smoke coming up. They thought they felt a little bit of ash in the air coming down. And they became alarmed too. And so they all turned to the host and asked him what was going on. Is that fire coming this way? It appears to do so. And he tried to assure them that it was all right. There's no problem at all. And he explained that this has happened many times before, and the fire has never reached the cabin. You're safe. You're all right. You don't have to worry about it. All's fine. Just relax and just enjoy the nice nature and look at the squirrels out there climbing the tree. But they didn't understand something, so they persisted in their fear. And one man, he pointed to his friend host and said, look, I know that fire is coming closer and closer. Why shouldn't we be alarmed? Shouldn't we get out of here fast while there's time before the fire reaches here? And the host again assured them that all was well. And then he understood that his explanations wasn't enough to calm them down. And he, of course, didn't want them to be alarmed. So I said, let's take a little walk. I'll show you something. So they all got down the steps of the porch and walked into the woods a little bit. And there was a hill off to one side. And they all walked to the top of the hill. And as they gazed toward the very obvious forest fire, it was there. There was red flames, and there was this smoke billowing up. But they saw something else, and they nodded and smiled and understood that the host told them they were safe, that he knew what he was talking about. Because what they saw down there was a river. Big, wide river, which they couldn't see from the cabin. And they looked and they saw the flames come up to the edge of it, and it was too wide. There's no way the fire could leap across it. Water, symbol of truth, of course. Water stopped the storm. Stormy fire right there. They understood. Come to the top of the hill. Don't try to reassure yourself whatever you do, because you're not in a position to understand the truth that I explained about there being one thing, one single thing, the unity of God and of the universe. You're not able to assure yourself yet. You need more knowledge. You need more listening to the voice that is calling you, which is the same thing as climbing the hill. So from a higher viewpoint, you look down and see that you're safe, and as long as the river is there, and the river will always be there, and as long as you are there, there's no way it can advance. I tell you, students of the spiritual life, that you can see for yourself, feel for yourself, know for yourself, spiritually, invisibly, what they saw and knew regarding their physical safety. When you're in sight of that broad flowing river all the time, if you lose sight of it, you'll start worrying again. So why you must remember that the river is there, and there you are, and you see that. You're not your reassurance. The river is, that it is there. And you know it's there. You didn't create the river. You don't have to try to create it. All you have to know that God is there, staying within spiritual sight. The fire was a storm, wasn't it? What's your storms? Let's look at the fire a little bit. Storm. What kind of storm raged through you today? I'll tell you one of them. You said to yourself, and were compelled to say to yourself, the way I now think and behave and run my life is the best one for me. Yes, you did. I've told you. The repetition of behavior is approval of that behavior. Why don't you interrupt it? Why don't you break it? Why are you so satisfied with the raging storm? Now, happily, for men and women who have a raging storm inside them, it can be detected. You can know it's there. That's one way in which you climb to the top of the hill, where you can see that the river is protecting you from the advancing fire. Now, I'll give you some very, very close details on this, because I want you to see it. Your statement, I gave you one at the start. I'm weak. Another statement, I may be weak, but the way I'm now going about it is the best way I can go about it. You're lying to yourself. You're making assumptions that have no fact. And guess what happens? There's something else, the voice that is calling, that contradicts what you said. You said, my present way is good for me. And the voice that is calling says, no, it isn't. See, people who come here one time and then go away, for example, that's the situation they're in. Or they've read a good book. Someone in Australia, someone in Bongo, there's a sensing of rightness that is there. And they say, I'm living my life the way I want to live it. Oh, no, you're not. You're living the way you are compelled to do it, slave. No, yes, no, yes. Guess who's going to win? You lose by the very arguing. The dark self, the sick self, fears anything unlike itself. Fears the light. Now, I've given you a clue. You will take that clue and you will go into action on it. You will see how you were always trying to protect your viewpoints, your attitudes, your way of life. You are trying desperately to protect it because it's all you've got. And you lie and say, this is all I can have. Why do you lie like that? Why do you allow a lie to take you over? And the voice that is calling saying, no, you are not. You are not happy. You are not loving. You are lying about it. You are lying about it. And then you lie and say, I'm not lying. Lose the argument. That's it. That's the whole business. Lose the argument. Don't be afraid of it. When reality says you're deceiving yourself and you're going to stay in the storm inside of yourself unless you listen to me. When reality says that, don't argue back. It's a habit. You argued back to your parents, didn't you? Argued with your brother and your sister. Argued with the teacher, mostly inside yourself, but the fight and the argument was there. Don't be afraid to lose the argument. And look, now you can't do this one time. Shoot for 50 times a day. You're not going to give any that easy, you know. You're possessed by the spirit of argumentation. And it's stormy, and it's fiery, and it looks like fun to stand up for your rights. Don't stand up for your rights. Don't have any rights at all. Realize that your admitted weakness, real, actual condition, that admission of being wrong is what gives you spiritual hearing, by which God can direct you to the top of the hill. And you will see the river. You thought it depended on you. And that really worried you because you know what you're really like. You can never depend on yourself, could you, for anything? And so you argued to keep your so-called precious life and plans in place. I leave you with this marvelous, victorious action. Lose so that you can win. And take a break. You are about to hear a guideline that you have eagerly been waiting to hear about. You may not have known that you wanted it, but you did. And here it is. You need never, never again try to settle anything with anyone. Come on now, see it. You don't see it yet. You're still too eager to get yourself into the peace picture, into your explanations to another person as to how you're going to get along with each other from now on. You're so eager to do something to repair the relationship, to make things right so that you'll feel better. You're so anxious to do something, all of course to reduce your own pain and anxiety. Repeat, you need never again in your whole life ever talk to any human being or group or organization in an attempt to try to settle things, make things right between you and him or her or it or they. You need never do it again. Aren't you fantastically relieved? You can stay home. You don't have to write the letter. You don't have to make the phone call. You don't have to drive yourself nuts as you usually do. Stay home and have a cup of tea. Take your shoes off if you want. You know what I'm getting at, don't you? Now you've wasted enough effort working from yourself to other people, trying to attain a certain objective which will never be attained. Why do you ever want to settle anything with anyone anyway? Well, because you're nervous and upset, and you want to get that man back. You want to be able to talk with your girlfriend on the phone and get together as you used to be able to do. You don't want anything to disturb your dream, and so you try to put it together again with your own schemes and plans and anxieties, because you don't know what's going to happen to you unless the matter is settled. Couldn't we talk it over? Never talk over anything with anyone. Never again. All you have to do is settle it within yourself. Now, how easy it is for you to hear that. How simple for you to write down in your notes what I just said. It's going to be quite a different matter, I assure you, and I want you to know this, for you to practice it. Because you have the words, but you don't have the power to turn the words into a reality for you personally. That's because you don't understand what life is really all about. You think that you were someone who have to take care of yourself. You've messed it up pretty badly, huh? Haven't you tried to take care of yourself? You got the education, and you got the activities, you got the books to read and the places to go, all in an attempt to take care of yourself. You're still nervous, you're still scared. You still don't know what's going to become of you. And in order to try to guarantee it, in order to know that one thing after another is going to happen that's going to be a security for you, you try to build your house on sand. And that's why you live in it so nervously. I'm talking about you living in your daily hours altogether out of control. Now, I said, all you have to do is settle it with yourself. And that's what we're doing here. That means you have to be here. That means you can't any longer live in the egotism and the conceit and the horrible mistake of thinking that you must go out and settle things. And you've got all your plans for doing that. Pleading with someone, trying to entice them. You, man, want to lure a woman into your life. You think that's going to give you security? Make a list sometime of your lures, of your compromises, of your little ways of... You want to get things settled once and for all so that you can relax, but you have never found it. You've never relaxed. Never, never, and you never will unless you follow what you hear here. Now, settling it with yourself certainly does not mean talking things over with yourself. You already do that. It's nothing but a monologue in your mind, dialogue. You're always discussing things with yourself, and you go nowhere except into exhaustion and a sleepless night. And the next morning, you can't bear the thought, can you? Underneath the surface, I know you look forward to breakfast. You have your favorite breakfast, and that you look forward to that. And you're grateful you have that to look forward to, because when that's over, you may run out of things to do. You may have to go to work, and you don't like that very much. I'm talking about you living from a 100% new world in which you live very peacefully and quietly and spiritually powerful, because you know you don't have to talk with anyone else. Come on, it's your life. What are you going around blabbing to other people for? Oh, you say, well, I have to release my tension. Why don't you have sense enough to get rid of the tension instead of releasing it 50 times a day? All I have to do is settle things inside myself. I want you to find out who you're talking about. See, that is an early major mistake you make. Maybe you sense it's useless to talk to other people. They're all insane in one way or another. They're weak. They'll mislead you. Everyone out there will mislead you. And you better see that. And you better see what I said a minute ago, that we're talking about something so drastic, so new, so true, so marvelous, that the mind can't grasp it. We're talking about you seeing that every difficulty you have, every anger, every shame, every humiliation, every one of the tensions and uncertainties and doubts that you have, I want you to know at the start one thing, that they all exist in your own mind. Now, don't tell me and don't tell yourself you already know that. You don't know it. You don't know it because you don't want to know it. You don't want to be responsible for your own pain. It's someone else. It's that horrible man who makes you unhappy. It's that deceiving lady who makes you so bitter against women in general. If you grasp this one point in the course of this talk, oh, how rich you would be at the end of the talk. That one point being, your pain is in your mind. My pain is in my mind. Now, what are you doing? Reading books about organizations that are going to help people. Those books are written by crazy people who have never helped themselves. And they write them to try to convince themselves that they have. In fact, they are teachers and they're gurus and they're ministers and they're authorities and they're leaders. And you have so little sense that you don't know enough to stop talking to those people. to stop reading their books. Stop consulting them. You want to continue with the charade, with the game, because you don't want to know that your pain is in your mind, because that would lead to responsibility that you don't want to take, and that's your problem. You want to be lazy. You want to drift down the river, asleep in the canoe. You want to build life according to your own ideas of what is good for you, your own beliefs. And anything from God, which you're hearing about right now, that seems to threaten your self-structured life is considered the enemy to be shouted at and driven out. Everything I have talked about in the first 10 minutes, you must become conscious of. Take the last one. The pain that I experience is only in me. Now I know where to give my attention 24 hours a day, 12 months a year. Now I have some intelligence. Now I have spiritual valor too, because I've been a wretched little lying weasel-like coward, always hoping for salvation from that man, from that raise in pay, from the new set of daydreams. You know what I'm talking about. Now you're being valorous in conceding that you and your agony are the only things you have, and you have no hope at all. And you must not have any friends at all. For heaven's sake, your friends are like you. The people you like to hang out with are just like you. Hundreds and thousands of monstrous minds. All of them with their smiles and their pleasant manners. All of them secretly cursing each other, just as you have done. You're not nice. Do you know that? Can you start with that you're not nice? You can't, there's no way you can be nice. To do nice, you have to be nice. You're not nice. You're bad, so you do what you are. And you're not even ashamed of it. Too bad. And the reason you're not ashamed of it is because you've never seen it. Shockingly close. Oh, come on. I know you don't go out and rob banks or machine gun people. You do things far worse than that. You make snippy, sarcastic remarks at people. In your mind, in that bad mind of yours, you do that, don't you? Don't you? See, I give you these rules year after year, and they don't take. You don't get them. If you sneer and snipe at another human being, the bullet goes both ways. If you like wounding another, because in your insecurity you want to win a point over them, if you wound another, that's self-wounding, the same thing. There's absolutely no way to escape it. The bullet goes both ways. Can't you make any connections at all? That's why you feel bad. You feel bad toward yourself because you want to hurt others in an attempt to get things settled. That's another way. All the ways are wrong, illegitimate, self-destructive. First you try the soft, kindly approach, don't you? trying to get something from someone, trying to get them back or whatever. The plea, the nice pleading, you're the nice person, come back to me, help me, be my friend, or you're trying to attract them. Be with me because I'm nice. That doesn't work. You try something else. You try a threat. Now, I'm going to talk about threats if we have time, a little more detail later on. But put in your mind that it is one of the great controlling factors of human life, one human being threatening another human being. The pain, the cause of pain, can never be in any other human being. Your pain is in you. If some thieves snuck out of their mountain cave every night and came down and robbed your house, you'd want to know where the thieves lived, wouldn't you, in order to go after them. You get up in the morning and somehow, while you were asleep, they snuck in and they took your money and your jewels and other things. You'd want to track them down, so you go out and you go around the mountains. You know they're back there somewhere, and you find the thieves' caves and put them out of business. That's what we're talking about. Only there's something in the story that is not in the explanation of it. You rob yourself. You're both the person being robbed and you're the thief. I said the whole unit is contained inside of you. Again, this should be, the most marvelous, relieving news you've heard in a long time. Now you don't have to bother with crummy people anymore. You don't have to be afraid that they're going to turn you down anymore. You don't need them at all. You don't need any other human being on earth for anything except physical necessities. It's all right to go to the grocery store and buy it from the food from the grocery, or have your TV repaired from the TV repairman. Outside of that, see, God has set up this life in a different way than you have. Why don't you investigate the way God has set it up instead of dumbly, foolishly following your own ways? I told you that the only problem you have is what is going on up there. Now, will you be a spiritual detective and catch the next time you're sarcastic to someone? The next time you blame someone? Will you be very, very valorous and very brave and see things that you now think don't exist inside of you, bad things? It's simple. Effective as of right now, all of you hearing me, you will either get healthy or you will get sicker. You're sick now, you understand. That's the starting platform. You're ill, you're sick, you're confused. You don't know what to do. Now you know. Now you know what to do. What are you going to do with what you now know what to do? What are you going to do with that? We help you to choose to get healthy. And without the help of this class, you cannot choose to get healthy, because for all your life, you've chosen to be miserable and wretched and unhealthy. You had better stop it now! Now! By a human clock, 18 minutes after 9 on this Saturday morning. Stop the downward plunge now. If you go too far, you won't be able to hear the voice anymore that's calling for you to turn around and go upward. Once upon a time, there was a pioneer group who went from the east part of the United States out west in early pioneer and cowboy days. They were a group of 200 people, 300 maybe. And they took the long trek out from the cities of the east to the vast plains and wilderness of the west, mountains and deserts and rivers. And they found a nice place to settle down. Now, there was a leader of this group, and he was, thank heaven, on the level of human leadership, he was a good man. He took his responsibility. You know why he was a good man? Because he was something else before being a good man. He was a spiritual man. There's no goodness without spirituality. He understood what we're talking about. The group settled down, and he got them all together, hundreds of people together, and he gave them a talk, and he gave them instructions, and he was not wishy-washy. He was in charge. He was in charge of them because he was first in charge of himself, and he was in charge of himself because God was in charge of him. Stood up on the back of one of the wagons and gave a talk. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to a raw place, unspoiled nature, and let's not spoil it. Let's develop it without spoiling it. Lots of work to do. Everyone has to work, including the teenage boys and girls, those perhaps a bit younger, till we get them into the educational process, a right one. Everyone has to work. We have homes to build. We have irrigation systems to plant for the farming and the growing of the food we need. We have roads and paths to build. Everyone has to work, and everyone has to work hard, which doesn't mean you have to think that just because you have to work hard that it's a miserable existence." He gave them a couple spiritual truths then, which helped them, but I'll have to go on with the story for now. Told them what to do, and everyone began working. They all assigned certain things to do, and little by little the landscape that had been nothing but raw nature now began to develop, and it looked good, looked nice. They began to build comfortable homes. However, I will remind you that we're talking about human beings, about men and women. And so one day something happened. And what happened one day was that one of the men, workers, came out of the woods at a distance, and he was clawed and wounded. And he came out, and everybody gathered. What happened? When he said, "I was attacked by a bear." Attacked by a bear. And they all felt sorry for him. Put him in a little temporary hospital they had there and took care of his wounds. And he was allowed to rest there, of course, for a while because he'd been attacked by a bear. A few days later, a woman came staggering out of the woods. She had been clawed by a mountain lion. Everyone crowded around her, felt sorry for her. Put her in the woman's ward of the hospital. But this business of people staggering out of the woods and being clawed by the animals, the wild animals out there, was happening too often for the leader to accept as necessary and natural. He began to get a little suspicious at these now 10 or 12 people who had come out of there injured, and they actually had been. But he wondered about it. So, being a man who was able to use his mind rightly, he could be suspicious without being neurotic. We've talked about spiritual suspicion, haven't we? Anyway, he investigated all these people who had been attacked by animals. And you know what he found out? He found out that they were bums. He found out that all those people were lazy. They didn't want to work as they were told to do. So they wandered out different parts of the woods and by the streams, and they sat out there and munched wild berries and looked back at the other people working. And felt, I want this to hit you because it's in you. I want you to feel what's in you. They felt very glad that they were getting away with something. You never get away with something when you're a lazy bum. The only thing you get is the heat of hell, of your own stupid, dishonest, low nature. He found out that they were lazy, foolish people who didn't want to do their share of the work, who did not want to cooperate with the building of a happy community. And because they were careless and dozed out there, the animals attacked them when they were not watchful. They slept out there and the animals came after them. And so they got hurt. And I want to bring in a side point before I go on with it. Don't feel sorry for wounded people, please, anymore. Don't say, oh, those poor, hungry, tattered people. God has ordained, and you had better get it now and never forget it. Every human being is responsible for himself. And I don't care one bit what his circumstances were when he was born, whether it was 300 years ago, whether he was born a poor peasant in South America or a rich man in Scotland. I don't care where any human being who's ever been born on this earth, where or how he was born. The very fact that you come into this world means that you have a responsibility. If you don't like the way things are socially, physically, whatever, then you, by being spiritual, could change that. I'm saying everyone is responsible for himself. Don't feel sorry for bums. They asked for it. The leader knew that. You see, people are so stupid. It's beyond expression. They crowded around the people in the hospital. Oh, poor man, you've been wounded. He loved that. Oh, she loved that. Modernization of it. People love to be a victim of social injustice, don't they? Join our cause for social justice and rightness. We're the persecuted ones. We've never been given a chance. You turn on your heel and you walk away. And don't listen when they call after you, first to try to make you feel guilty, and then when you refuse to feel guilty, they hurl hate remarks after you. Watch them switch when their tricks don't work. Well, my question to you is, you're the pioneer. Now all these people, these 200 or 300 people that I talked about, oh, by the way, the leader exposed them as the frauds they were and put them to work. You know what's a great philosophy? It used to be the philosophy of the United States. Too bad it's all gone. It's a tragedy it's gone. If you don't work, you don't eat. What if the government and everyone else practiced that? Don't worry, they would work because they want to eat. But if they think they're going to get a handout, they think they can go out in the woods and munch berries and laugh and think of the free ride they're getting, they'll do it. Everybody will do it because everybody's low. So the community that we talked about of 200 or 300 people, that is an illustration of the 200 or 300 people inside of you. Or is it more? 500 maybe? Well, you say you love someone 1 minute, next minute you hate them. Which one are you? You consider yourself an intelligent person by doing or writing a certain thing. You consider yourself intelligent. Someone criticizes what you said you were stupid, now you feel stupid. Which are you, intelligent and stupid? That's another thing you have got to see, and I've given you plenty of clues on that. Of all the 500 people inside of you, the different thoughts, moods, aggressions, cowardly parts, of all the 500, you are not one of them. You're none of them at all. you're not even a lazy bum. You've accepted the position of being a lazy bum. So in that sense, you are. But you're nothing you can ever think about. You are something that needs no thought at all. All right, now we'll talk about, I said we're going to talk about threats. You're threatened all the time. You feel threatened, don't you? Every little kid, who threatened you? Parents and teachers. I think we've described that pretty thoroughly. You feel threatened, and that threats by other people, by newspaper headlines. They seem threatening to you. You're going to cut off oil, and it's going to go up to big expense down at the gas station. You feel threatened all the time. Question. Connect this with what I discussed 30 seconds ago. You feel threatened? Who feels threatened? If you could answer that question, you never ever feel threatened or attacked again by anyone, anything, anytime, anyplace, anyhow. Who feels threatened? You insist on answering that question. Well, I feel threatened. Things aren't going the way I'd originally planned. I want them to go straight down. They went left or right or up or down. I feel in danger. That's a lie. Now, listen to what I'm going to say next. Get it down. There is no one inside of you who is in danger at all. Not in reality. You feel threatened. You feel in danger. But who is doing the feeling? Your identification with a wrong sense of self. You say, I am a person who should get what I want. Now that's a lie, but you've said that lie. Now you've established an identity, a self. I should get that man, or I should get rid of that man, and then I'll be happy. You won't be. No matter what you do, you'll never be happy because you're not at all that you by which you identified yourself. But here, you've said, I've got to get that. All right, you don't get that. Now, you feel in danger by being deprived of what you wanted. Who feels in danger? A delusion. A false thought. A false belief that you exist as a person who has to have this or that. And you say, if I get it, if I get the money, if I get the nice home, whatever, you know what it is, if I get people liking me and thinking I'm great, then I'll be happy. You'll never be happy, and you never have been. Or, if I don't get it, I'm so weak, I'll feel threatened and lost, and I don't want to feel that way. Will you please stop thinking your misery into existence? You think a phony person into existence, which you don't yet understand, which is why you continue to do it. Now, I want you to understand this. You better get the tape and listen over it several times. I want you to understand how you have created your belief in yourself and absolutely swear that it's real. It's not. You swear that it's real. God says it isn't. Who are you going to believe? Your lying self or God? God never lies to you. You always lie to yourself and everyone else. Now, if you lived from the Spirit of God, if you lived from the purity and the innocence of the spiritual life, there would be no liar there. There'd be no one who sets up demands, aims, goals, and says, I have to have those. You'd have everything. Now, what I'm going to say next, doesn't this make sense to you? If you really, really, really have God in your life, don't you have everything? What are you doing trying to find something else? You don't have to. Please stop. Please stop looking down at the miserable, wretched, vicious, worthless little world. And please start looking up. Take a break, and we have lots of interesting things after the break. Here is your exercise, some work for you to do until tomorrow morning's class. Write the following sentence down. No one, including me, wins or loses anything. No one, including me, wins or loses anything. A lot to think about, right? Think about it and get all the riches there are in that. Good morning.